Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So basically, thank you for taking time out today. I know it's a weekend. I really appreciate you spending time with us today. All right. So if you could quickly give you a introduction about yourself, like talk to me about your education, your experience, overall from a career standpoint, the tech stack you've been working on.
Yeah, sure.
Then we'll take it.
Sure. So starting with my location, so I'm from Bangalore, right? And I did, complete my education, that is like my BTech. That's from New Horizon College of Engineering. That's a Bangalore-based college. So I completed it in 2018. And from then, I'm working with Wipro as a project engineer. And, that was a campus placement. Right. So throughout my tenure of 2.7 years in Wipro, I have taken up various roles, starting with performance analyst, followed by DevOps engineer. And then also, after that, I started out as a Java developer backend. Right. And I have touched upon various domains. Right. So starting with retail, logistics, real estate, and currently I'm working for Roche Diagnostics. That's a healthcare based project. Right. So it's more into, Java, Spring Boot, Hibernate, and all those things, right? So microservices, cloud. So when I say cloud, I have almost like 2+ experience in Azure, right? So that's for my introduction.
Okay, that's great. So can you just help me with the overall experience, relevant experience, right, from each technology stack, like from Java, JDBC, right? What's your experience range there?
Yeah, so I'll put it this way, because all the projects which I have taken, they were completely of similar stack. So that was basically core Java, Spring Boot, microservices, and on the cloud side it was Azure, right? So I hold almost like 2+ years of experience in these.
All of them, okay. Because I did see some DevOps activities that you've been doing.
Yes. So at initial stages of my career, I did try out various things which suits me better, and then I understood. Okay. Yeah. So development is what I'll pursue further.
Got it. Okay. So can you talk to me about I think I see that you started working with Java related projects from 2019, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
So now can you talk to me about the various projects that you have worked using Java JDBC tech stack?
Yeah, surely. So, starting out with the initial, I'll start with all the projects which I worked on a brief note, right? So, my first project was basically, I was working as a performance analyst. So, we were, taking up all the performance tests, load test and endurance tests and all those things. Then followed by the DevOps part of it. So, wherein I was put into a project that was migrating from the, on-premise setup to cloud setup, right? So the cloud they were working on was AWS. So we did some, DevOps activity like making out the pipelines and then, deploying stuff, right? So that did include Docker, Kubernetes, everything. And then again, I started out my first project in, Java, right? So that was a change in my career path, I would say. So yeah, since I was a junior there, so I was more into the enhancements part and not into the core development. But so when I say enhancements, it did include all the bug fixes, sonar lane fixings, and then again the test cases, right? Unit test cases, writing code coverage, all those. And the current project which I am right now into, it's like almost 1 year I am into this project. This is the project which actually gave me a very good exposure to all the latest technologies, right? So it was actually it's actually a IoT based project. So I'll just give you a brief intro to it. So I'll give you a very small example. So let's say you have a Fitband on your hand. So this particular device does sync with your phone. So now there can be various protocols, but let's imagine it's a web-based protocol that is being used for all the transactions, and then there sits a cloud in between which handles all the and process everything. So this particular cloud, which we call it as the centralized management system or the CM, right? So this is where our application actually comes into the picture. So Roche basically distributes all its devices to the hospitals. Right, so ECG, glucose checking devices, and all those stuff. So these devices have to be managed from the application. So that's a web application. That's the Cobus Infinity solution. So we work on that. So it almost has 30+ microservices, and I did get a chance to work on various services and then various functionalities. Right. So that does includes Azure, like we did use function apps, logic apps, right? Then we had event hubs, and so on, so on. Yeah, so that did give me a very good insight to, the latest trending technologies.
Got it. Okay, so primarily like from this overall, so since it's a IT-based application, so primarily you've been working on the microservices portion of it, right? Overall, like so how much of your work involved in actually setting up the services on cloud as well?
Yeah, so we do have a DevOps team who takes care of the deployment part. They do set up all the the pipelines and everything. But talking of what's my role into it, so yes, we do have YAML files which has to be configured from the developer's point of view, because this is what will be further down the line, deployed as a service, right? So we did like the Swagger integration. So that's more like a documentation for the APIs, right? And also we do configure most of the resources, right? The example, the ones which I specified, like the event hubs, the Redis cache. Then we also had function apps, right? And so on. And again, we have to also specify the actuators, everything. So in order to see if the service is up or not. And also we do write the Docker file, right, which will actually convert. Which will actually package my jar file into a Docker file. Then this Docker file is what actually is used to deploy in the Kubernetes cluster. And then these are from the deployment perspective, but more talking of the development part, we do create REST endpoints, we do create repositories and all. If we want to do some transaction, then we do make internal transactions between the microservices using REST templates, right? And yeah, so similarly, like we have like different things.
Okay, got it. So which framework are you using for developing your REST APIs?
It's Spring Boot.
Spring Boot. Okay, great. Okay, so can you talk to me about your day-to-day life? Like how does it look like? So in terms of a project, how long this project has been running, and then how does the work come to you, and then what do you do?
Sure. So this project is quite new to Wipro. So it's not a very old project, and it's not even a legacy project. Since it's a new project, so they really opted for almost all the trending technologies, starting with the Azure and Spring, all the new versions of it, right? And also the microservice. So when I say microservices, we are actually following the SOA, right? The service-oriented architecture, out of which one service is like the master service, which has most of the common implementations, followed by all the other services which are restricted to specific tasks, right? So talking of how I came up into the project is, so this project was divided into two phases, the phase 1 and the phase 2. So I joined after phase 1. So phase 1 was basically the skeletal of the project, which laid down the foundation. And then in the phase 2, it was more into the core development of the application, wherein various services were supposed to be created from scratch, and then the implementations of the APIs which which were supposed to exist, right? So I can give you certain examples. One of the functionality which I worked was an extraction service. So what it actually does is it will actually poll one blob storage that's on the Azure, and then it once any file actually comes up into that, it will take it up and then extract it further down to another storage, and then there will be another service that will be polling the same thing, and it will initiate a further transaction. So it was actually a software distribution kind of a thing. So that's that. And then also some functionalities wherein we have to list all the devices based on certain criteria. So that was more like a filtering kind of a functionality, right? So these are just some of the examples which I worked on. But yes, again, talking of the day-to-day activities, so how the whole thing works is we work in a in a Scrum system, wherein one Scrum is specified to certain features, and then these particular features are developed over a course of a month, let's say. So each month is divided into 4 small sprints, right? So the first 3 sprints is more of a development one, and the last one is dedicated to the testing and if any integrations are required. Right. So, so let's say I develop something, then I'll test it, I'll deploy it, since it's a DevOps kind of a thing. So I can see it in a small span of time, my changes that are deployed. So I'll test it using Postman, all the APIs, And then, I have to, again, let's say I find that my API is working as expected. I'll again deploy it back to my main, the main URL, right? Our environment basically. And then I have to initiate, a request to test it. Let's say it does require some UI integration. Then again, we interact with the UI guys. We interact with the architects and everyone. So we come up with a good plan of integration of UI and the backend activities, so that it gives a very efficient, a flexible application, right? So yeah, so that's the way we work in our project.
Got it.
Yeah. And later on in the last sprint, we do get bugs and all, which can be fixed in like two ways. The first approach is directly the tester contacts us, because there are sometimes what happens is, the application just fails because there is data inconsistency. Let's say the data is not present in the database and it is failing, and it's not something from the development point of view, but again, in those situations, we do put some values there in the database so that it helps the tester. Right, so that is one way, and the other one is the main bugs, which is put down as an Excel sheet and then passed down to the architects. The architects further delegate it to the leads, and then leads delegate it to us, the developers, and then we fix them, and then we revert back to the QA guys, and the process goes on and on till everything is fixed up.
Okay, great. Okay. So when you say we, right, how big is your team?
My team is almost 10 developers, right? Out of which 5 are senior ones, and then we are the other junior ones, right? So that does includes me, and yeah, and we have 3 leads. They handle various.
Java developers, or it's a mix of Java and UI?
No. When I say our team, so I'm just talking about the backend team. Again, we have a similar hierarchy. Yeah.
Okay.
So for UI also similar, we have 10 number of people, and the hierarchy goes same.
Got it. Okay, I think that was a good intro, Sai. Thanks for that. Okay, so let's get started off with some technical questions, right?
Yeah, sure.
So let me start off with some basic ones, right? So what do you understand with the static variables? What static variables are in Java?
Okay. So when I say static variables, let's talk about the instance ones, right? These are the other variables that are not non-static ones. So these are actually associated with the object, right? So static are basically associated with the class, right? So let's say the program runs and they exist throughout the the scope of the class. Till this class is there, it will be associated with that particular class. So when say static, so static context can be added to a method also. And it can be associated with a data variable also, right? So these like methods can only, let's say I am talking of a static variable. So from a method, until and unless it's not in a static context, I cannot access it, right? So in simple, static methods can directly access static variables only, right? Though there are other so like that.
So now with static variables, right, let's say you're working in this concurrent environment situation, right, like any APIs that you develop, like, so there'll be multiple requests coming through in parallel, and then you have the static variable at the class level maintained in your JVM, right?
Okay.
So now let's say I'm maintaining a variable called amount.
Okay.
In static variable, okay, as a static variable. And then I just want to ensure that, so I've written a business logic to say, okay, let's say if you get a request to say credit some amount or debit some amount, okay? So based on that, I want to do an additional operation or a subtraction operation on that. Okay. So now, but only thing I want to ensure is all these operations are happening in order, right? So now with concurrent requests coming into my system and the static variable being maintained at the class level, right? Instead of as an instance variable. So there is a chance that out of order updates can happen, right?
Yes.
So now, how can I actually ensure that orderly updates can take place on this amount variable, which I described?
Okay.
And then what sort of facilities are available in Java?
Okay. So if I assume all the requests are like threads, then I can simply synchronize it, right? So synchronization, since I'll make it synchronized, so what will actually happen is one thread will, assuming that one request is like a one thread, so one thread will be actually accessing it in a one time, right? So that is one way. Let's say I just want one static variable to be, let's say I just want one object, right? Throughout or the whole transaction, I can also make the class as a singleton class, right? So that's the singleton approach I can take, so that I will have only one, and then we can go with the thread safety there, right? So probably I'll take up that approach to make sure.
Okay, you'll do it as a singleton, right?
Yes.
So what is a singleton again? What is a singleton?
Yeah, so singleton, what actually, so when I say singleton, it's actually a design pattern. So when I say design pattern, it's a creational design pattern, right? So what actually happens in singleton is, let's say I want only one instance of my class to be, existence. I mean, it should exist throughout the whole application. So I'll go with a singleton. So it's quite simple to make a singleton one. So what I'll actually make is, I'll make a private static, create just one object, right? And then there will be one method, let's say get instance. So this again will be a static because the object is again a static context, right? So, and then let's say I want to create an object. So I'll specify the class get instance. It will give me that particular instance only.
Okay. So synchronized. So now synchronized. There are multiple ways of achieving synchronization, right? So have you tried out any of those techniques in your projects?
In my project, actually, we don't use multi-threading, right? So that's there. But again, let's say synchronization. Okay, we can also make it volatile. So volatile, what will actually ensure is the variable which I'm trying to access, that will be loaded from the main memory, right? So that's also one way of doing it. But yeah, usually we put anything we want to synchronize, we'll put it under a synchronized block, so that only one thread can access it in one time. And then again, there are scenarios where we can also go with concurrent hash map, which again enables concurrency through only locking those segments which take up the write operations. And for the read operations, again, let's say I have 16, that is the initial, let's say that's the original initial capacity, 16 segments, right? So let's say one of them is required for write operation, so that will be locked, and the rest 15 still can be read out. So the 16 other threads can actually access it. So
okay. So since you talked about concurrent hash map, right? So can you explain a scenario that you've used where you had to make use of a concurrent hash map in your project?
In my project, again, concurrent hash map will actually come in a context of multi-threading environment where we are dealing with a lot of threads. But since my project is not using it, we usually go with hash map. But I can actually tell about the difference between both, because
I got you. I mean, that's fine. So now, what all collections have you made use of?
So we did extensively use lists, sets, and maps, right? So a list usually, since my project is a NoSQL project, right? So all the JPA transactions that happen return a list, right? So that's a primary thing we use. Now again, we do use set in certain situations where we want to filter certain data. Let's say I want locations for a particular country, right? So I cannot have multiple things. So that set actually ensures that all the unique values are actually coming up, right? So for those kind of things, yes, I'll go with set. And again, map. So we do use something called as the Redis cache for caching activities. So Redis actually takes up key value pairs. So in those situations, we have taken up map so that the key will be, let's say, a string followed by another string or an integer, something like that, right? So these are the commonly used ones, right? So yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, here are the things I like. If I just want to make one request, if you could share your screen, right?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to give a simple programming problem, and then if you could take a crack at that.
Yeah. Just give me 1 minute. I'm sharing it.
Okay. So do you see that?
Okay. Yeah, I do see it. Okay. So basically, we want to print the count. Yeah. Okay. I will give it a try. So what I'll be doing is, I'm assuming this is like a list, right? Or list of, let's say, fruits, something like this. I'm just giving a template, so that will help the logic, right? So what I'll be doing is, let's say it's something like this. So for let's say fruit, fruit in fruits, is I want the count, right? Okay. Yeah. So if contains this particular fruit. I'll explain the logic. Just give me 1 minute.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I'll explain the logic. Okay, I've just taken it as fruits here, but again, in real time, probably I would choose strings because these are lists of strings. So what actually happens is I'll take up a map, right? So that's a hash map. So for each string, so let's say it's yeah. So I'll have a string. I'll check up with that particular string if it is existing. So let's say I'm trying to find orange, and this is the first time I'm seeing orange. So what will happen is it will put that particular value orange and then followed by 1, right? So this particular 1 is nothing but the count of its occurrence, right? So let's say again occurrence comes. What actually will happen is since it is containing it, it will get the value. So fruit dot get actually will give the value of that particular fruit, right? So so it will be like orange, right? Orange has already a value 1, so I'm just adding it like 1 and then again putting it. So once the whole everything gets sorted out, and when I print it, so it will, let's say I am trying to print my map, so it will give me, let's say orange, the count, let's say it is 2, and then apple followed by its count, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now if you see my output, right, do you see a pattern there? Yeah. There you kind of
Pattern?
One part of the problem. So can you identify the other part of the problem there? What it is?
Let me check. I'm not able to figure it out. Can you help me there?
Do you see that? Like, okay, it comes out in random order, right? Then
Okay.
when it is printing, what order is it?
Yeah, so let's say I want order, then I can directly go with a linked hash map. That's the only change I have to do if I want, because I thought, since it's a linked hash map, it will maintain the order. So the insertion order will be handled there.
Correct. The insertion order will be maintained, but is it really printing based on the insertion order there in the output? What is the order based on?
Okay.
If you look at it.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so it's like a sorted one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So if you have to get a sorted output,
Then
what will you change?
I'll make it tree map. It will sort it based on the key, since the string is so it will be based on the ascending order of it. So let's say I want different. Okay. Yeah.
Now, right? So now, so you got it as a primitive data type, right? Like using strings. Now, let's say you're getting a list of fruit objects.
Okay.
Okay. So now, if you look at the chart there, so now, so let's say you're getting like. Name is orange. Right? So let's say you get something like this. Okay. So fruit, one is fruit name, right? Then you are going to have another attribute called, let's say, price of the fruit, for example. I'm just giving them something. Okay? And then also what color the fruit is. Okay? So now let's say this is your fruit class attributes. Okay? So now let's say you've got the fruit objects now.
Okay.
Similar to what I gave initially. Right? How would you actually change this approach or this implementation to fit into handle the fruit objects and then produce the same output?
Okay. Okay. just give me 1 minute. So now I have an object. Okay, let's write it down. So let's say I have a class root. These values. Okay. So I'll be sorting it using fruit name. Okay, and I want all the distinct ones. I mean the unique ones.
So the output has to be the same. If you see there.
Okay.
Output has to be the same. Only thing is I'm changing you the input, but I want to still see the same output.
Okay.
So how will you change your implementation?
Yeah, I'm just trying to give it a try. Root object followed by I think this should work. So I'll be taking up a list of fruits, and then I'll be iterating through the fruits. I'm now checking if that particular name exists. I'm just assuming I have the getter and setter, right? And if it is there, then I'm putting it. And again, the remaining things pretty much are the same.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's move on. So now, Sai, have you worked on any databases actually?
I have worked on so the databases which I have worked on, they are all like NoSQL. So mostly I have worked since my project always had Azure associated with it. So in Azure we always go with the Cosmos DB. So that's a NoSQL document based database. Yeah. So in order to make all the transactions, we'll actually go with the extending the CRUD document repository, and then we'll have all the JPA functions in it. Let's say I'll give you one simple example. Let's say I have one data that is something like this. There's something, and I have another because in document everything will be stored as a JSON objects, right? And then I again have, let's say, some gravel or something, and then there's something. Okay, so these kind of data I'll have. So let's say I want to find. Okay, I'll also have an ID field. Let's say one, and then I have ID field. Yeah. So let's say I want to get these values. So what I'll actually be doing is I'll have a repository INTF, that is my repository interface. So what actually that will be doing is the same thing. So
okay.
it will be.
I think I'll come to this one, but before we get there, right?
Yeah.
So now, so let's say I just wanted to give you some simple scenario, right?
Okay.
Let's say I have, so in my company, right, I want to create a learning management portal.
Okay.
I think even in Wipro, I might have one of these learning management portals, right, where you'll have to take some courses, do some certifications, etc. Right? Yeah. So let's say I want to create one similar portal here in my company. Okay. So now, what I want to do is, so now before COVID, we used to have all physical classroom based courses. Now I'm going to have online courses as well, where content is delivered through videos as well, right? Okay. So now, can you talk to me like how you would approach designing such an application, wherein you would actually like ensure that there is a track of courses which the employees are taking, and then obviously like whether the employee has registered, has completed. So that system should be able to tell that if I log in and then see the learning management portal, right? Okay. And then obviously handle all these different types of courses as well. And then the content too. As you see, like before it was classroom, now it's online, there's a video content available. How do you design such an application? You can start from the database. And then we can take it forward layer by layer. Okay, layer by layer.
Okay, cool. So since we are talking of a learning portal, I'm assuming the access is given public. Everyone can access that particular thing, right? Okay. With certain assumptions, I'll be starting out. So starting with the learning portal, let's say I have, okay, I'm assuming I'm also taking up microservices kind of a thing. So various services will be dedicated to certain things. So since let's say okay, my main application has okay. Okay, so I'm categorizing
So
this.
let's start with the database, right? Like how would you actually lay out your database? What sort of entities or documents you're going to have for this?
Yeah. I'm going to
Really open it up to your services. Yeah.
Yeah. So how I'm actually taking up this is, let's say I have the application. So in the application, I'm dividing it into various categories of study materials that can be accessed, right? So let's say I have content for digital courses, right? So digital courses are basically all the trending technologies. Then there can be non-digital ones, right? Courses, and then I can have something like miscellaneous, something like this, some miscellaneous courses, which includes most of the training materials that are given to people who come up newly to the organization to understand various things, right? So talking of the digital course, I can give a model like uh, let's call it a name of the course, and okay, name of the course followed by okay, followed by the, let's say I am actually having the, let's assume it's a video, so I'll be specifying the video I will specifying the video URL, right, from where the video has to be fetched, right, and then I'll also specify the time that time required to complete that particular course, right. This is there. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So okay, I'm just keeping it minimal. So as of now, okay, then I can also have the completion status. Yeah, I can have this also, and the same goes with non-digital thing. I'll have the name and everything. Or the another approach is I can actually take course and then I can put a type which will actually specify is it a non-digital course or a digital course. But I just wanted to keep it more decoupled, right? So that's why I'm taking it like this, so that if it
going with a document-based database, you have different type, split this up into different collections.
Yeah, so in the document, right? So they will be actually stored in as like the JSON objects, right? So whenever I do any transaction on my DB, right? So I can, okay, I'll just show it. Just give me 1 minute, right? Yeah. So I'll also have the same for and so this is from the LLD perspective, the low-level design, right? And yeah, so this is how my basic model class will look for my learning this thing. I'm assuming my application supports 3 different courses that one can take up, right? And each course. So how actually this will look like in the coding perspective is, so basically I'll be having one class, model class, that is digital, non-digital, and the miscellaneous. So how my API gonna look is, so I'll have let's say I am keeping one package model classes, right? So inside the model class I'll have these 3, digital, non-digital, and then followed by the miscellaneous one, and then I'll have a repository layer, right? So now it's okay, so I'm just keeping it in another package, let's say my repo package. So inside that I'll have two things. The first one will be the INTF, so that's my interface, right? So this particular interface will be annotated with at document, and in the document I'll specify the base model. So let's say this basically it will be like 3 interfaces and 3 classes which are segregated based on the digital, non-digital, and miscellaneous. But yeah, here I'll be specifying the model class. So let's say that is digital. So digital will be specified here, and then this will be actually extending my so this extends my CRUD repo, .document repo, right? And here I'll be specifying the model class again. So my model is like digital, followed by my okay, I do need an ID. Yeah. So my ID is an integer string value. Let's say I'm taking string name as I'm defining like each course name will be unique. I'm assuming that. So this particular name is my primary key there, right? So inside this particular interface, I specify various methods which I'll be requiring. So all the methods will actually be giving the list of objects. So since it's a digital one, so it will have a digital one here, followed by find, let's say all and find by various things. So this is where I will be specifying all the required methods, right? And then this is from the database perspective. Again, we'll have the similar one for all the other two also. And then talking of the service layer, okay, before going to the service layer, let's talk about the controller. So in my controller, I'll have REST mappings, REST API mappings, right? So starting with, so I'll annotate that particular with REST controller, and then inside it, let's say I need various endpoints. So let's say I create one request mapping. Inside that request mapping, I'll specify v1. So this actually denotes this is my first version, and then inside it I'll also have some get mappings, right? So get mappings will get mapping here, and inside that, let's say I specify course, and then here I specify the digital. Okay, let's keep it type. So it will actually and then again inside that there will be a function. That function, inside the function I'll get, let's say, path variable string, and then let's say that's the type. So inside that I'll make a call to my service layer. So let's say so I have a service layer object in between, I'm assuming. So let's say it will be somewhat like this. Let's say my service IMPL service. So this will be actually auto-wired. I can either auto-wire it here itself, or I can put it in the constructor, right? That is one approach. And then what I'll be doing is I'll make a call to my service layer from here. Let's say I just want to get all the details of that particular type, right? So I'll give like service dot, let's say, get details class details, and everything. Again, what it actually will return is following the industry standard. So I won't be directly passing down the object, but I'll be passing the repository entity, right? Sorry, response entity. Sorry, response. Yeah. So in the this thing, response entity will be passed down. So in the response entity, I'll be enclosing my object which I'm expecting, right? So it can be digital. So let's say it's giving all the digital ones, or since okay, I don't know the types, I can either make it simply like an object. Yeah, I can directly make it object also, right? So then I have to enclose these two in a try catch block in order to handle any exception that is happening. So this is from the controller point of view. And again, we have the service layer. So in order to have the in the DB this thing, we have to annotate it with also at repository, so that it ensures it's a repository layer. Again, repository and the at service layer can component annotations.
You don't have document and repository annotated on the same class.
Sorry.
You're going to have document and repository annotations on the same class.
Yes, I can keep, right. I mean, this will. Oh, okay, sorry. Right. Yeah. Yes, it's not required. Yeah, and the service we will use because it's okay. Yeah. So okay, we'll for the service this thing will. For the service class, which is actually implementing the interface, we'll keep this. Let's say that class extends my service INTF, and inside this I will give the definition, and by overriding all the so I'll be using at override.
Okay. So Shankar, I just want to interrupt here, right?
Yeah.
So now. So from your overall problem statement, right? So I talked about a lot of things, right? So one is yes, there are different types of courses, but I also want to ensure that I want to capture the employee registrations and then also manage the statuses of that, right? So from your overall design that you have taken here, like from let's start with the database, right? So where are we covering those actually?
Okay.
How are they going to be maintained?
Okay. Actually, okay. I didn't pick up that requirement. So what exactly was the requirement? Can you please repeat it again so that I can incorporate it?
It's a learning management portal, right?
Yeah.
So the employees' course registrations and progress and then status has to be managed, right? So employees will register to a course, right? Could be online or a physical classroom, right? And then that needs to be managed, right? So if I log in, I should be knowing like, okay, what all courses I have taken, and then how it can be like, what's the status of the
this thing, okay.
How to model it here on the database, what we do, like what model collections.
Yeah, so one approach can be in the employee table itself. I can incorporate all the learning things what he can do. Then let's say this is learning, application kind of a thing, and I am having this particular as a model class which has these three values here inside it. And inside the employee, let's say employee has a dependency of the learning within it. So let's say I have the employee. So inside that I'll have all the fields followed by the learning part also. So it will ensure that okay, for this particular employee, these things are existing. So for this particular course, let's say what is the completion status and time required and all that. So that is one approach we can take, I believe. Because incorporating everything in this again will break down the rule of making it micro.
Sorry, good.
Yeah,
the rule of what?
making it more decoupled, right? So let's say I want it in a microservice kind of a thing. So I wanted to have it everything, like more segregated rather than congested. So that's right.
Okay. So since you talked about decoupling, right? So now how will your microservices look like? So you're going to create. Good. I just want to hear you how you want to bring this microservices.
Okay. So employee can be one microservices, and this learning can be a different one, right? So let's say I make this learning application and my model class actually holds these three values internally, right? Or can be a list of courses or something like that. And then inside the employee, there will be various other fields followed by a learning component in which it will specify, okay, for this particular employee, these many, courses were enrolled or, these are the things that are handled. So I thought we can take that approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now here is the question, right? Now let's say I want to have this dashboard to find out what are all the most popular courses. So typically, if you've seen portals like Udemy or Coursera,
yes.
you have seen like which course is the most popular one. How would you actually implement that in the system?
Okay.
What changes you will make to your design and then the implementation overall?
Let me think of it. Okay. Yeah, we can incorporate it here. Just thinking. So it can be based on the number of views. I'll take views as a criteria to figure out which one is most popular, right? So let's say I do have something called as a view here.
No, but it doesn't really typically do you think like based on the number of views, popularity will increase, or depending on number of registrations that they have got?
Okay.
Popularity come in.
Okay. So okay, if we take registration, then okay, we can put registration count also. Which will specify for that particular course how many count of registrations are done. And let's say I want, so I'll have another service which will actually take care of, throwing up and sorting which course is actually a lot more popular based on the registration count. So I can actually filter it out. So let's say I have a implementation, I have a service which takes care of everything else, and then what it actually will do is, let's say I have a list of my application, learning application one. app. So this particular will have, okay, popular one. That is equal to, let's say I make a repository call, get, and then get all the courses that are available, right? So this is something which will be there in my the repo database, and then since I have all the this one, so I can do popular stream, then I can basically filter them. I can just sort them. I can specify like sorted, and inside that I can specify the parameter. So the parameter will be learn app dot, let's say course is the field, and inside that get registration, right? So it will be based on that it will sort, and then I can just collect to collections dot to list, and this particular data will be then passed down to the, let's say, the UI, and the UI can then further process it, right? So I think we can do it.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's move on. So now, have you worked on any SQL databases? RDBMS databases?
RDMS, no. I've worked on.
Okay. Do you have some knowledge around it at least? Like, have you spent time learning outside the project or anything?
Yes, I did understand how to, during my learning time. Let's say I just know the basics. Let's say if I want to how to make tables and how to, do some basic DB transactions. Like let's say I want, table or something. So I'll always model class will be annotated with the table, right? So let's say I have some fields down the line, and then I want some ID. So I'll specify like ID, and then again, let's say I want to use CRUD repository JPA, so I'll directly go with again the CRUD repo JPA here, specify the table. Okay. Yeah, this basic stuff.
Actually, SQL query perspective, have you had any chance to try out any SQL queries directly on, let's say, Postgre or MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, or anything?
Yeah, no, I didn't get chance.
Okay, okay. Anything during your engineering days? You tried out any RDBMS at all?
Yeah, we had, but I had to recall all those.
Alright, okay. Okay, yes, that's fine. Let's move on, right? So now, coming to this one right now, we talked about creating these controllers, right?
Okay.
So now these are my endpoints now, and then if I want to secure it, so how can I do that using Spring?
Yeah, so Spring does provides a very good facility to do that. Again, let's say I want, this is my endpoint. So what I'll actually do is, I'll just put one annotation here, that is pre-auth, right? Pre-auth I can use, pre-authorize. Yeah. Inside that, I can specify has role. So this is something that actually we use in our project to, let's say this is admin and the control admin. Only these two have the access, let's say. So these things actually come up from the JWTs and the BREF token that is being passed down the stride. So, hello.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So these basically, will be part of the JWTs we will be sending, right? So they will have, actually what happens is we are using Azure directories there, right? So in the Azure directories, we will be specifying all the users followed by their role, in order, so that will be there. And again, in order to make a mapping, so in our YAML files, we do specify the connection string and all the configurations that are required to connect to that particular Azure directory. And but in order to secure an API, we will be using this. And another way, there is a scenario where one microservice is actually calling up the other microservice, right? So in order to have that consistency there, so what we will be actually doing is we'll simply specify, so in the calls which we make, so that is the open API calls. So basically these are internally REST templates. Inside that I'll be passing down my URL. So this will be the URL. So this URL will be of the other microservices, and there will be another REST point that will be handling it. So another, we will also pass the JWT and the correlation IDs So correlation ID will actually maintain, that tracing part. So that let's say we want to trace how the microservice is actually behaving on a longer run between the internal transactions, right? And then at the end, again we do get body. So how actually these work is quite simple. So we have something called as one will be the producer, right? So the producer will be the one which we are trying to access from this particular URL, and then this, the source one will be basically the consumer, right? So this will actually consume the output that is being given by, given by the destination one. So this is how we do the transactions in between.
You talked about a couple of things, right? Like, so one is your communication between microservices, correlation IDs. So how do you generate correlation IDs which are unique and then consistent so that you have end-to-end traceability?
Yeah. So as and when any transaction is happening, right? So there is, as I said, we are following something called as the SOA architecture. So there is a master service which has implementation for all the common properties, right? All the common methods that will be used. Let's say the Open API call. So internally, if you see the implementation, it is basically REST templates, right? So so that is there. And then we also have something called as set trace property. So this is another method that actually takes up that is actually being called at each transaction that is being. So what it actually does is, let's say if the value is null, so that means in the right, in the what you call the get mapping also, like we will get these values, right? So let's say there is no trace value that is being coming from the in the request, right? So let's say it is null. So in that case, it simply denotes that okay, this is a fresh request, right? So in that case, I'll generate one. So we generate UUIDs, right? So there is a method that is basically generates the unique identifiers. It's so it will generate it, and then I will set this particular trace ID to my, I'll map this particular to my correlation ID, right? So this will be there, and let's say there is already one, if it is not null, that means
the scope of your correlation ID within your JVM.
Throughout the JVM, it will be it will be like a session, right? Throughout the HTTP request and the the response comes back till then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now you talked about Azure AD, right, based on JWT. Now, so where is the authentication exactly happening actually in your API call right now?
Authentication, yes, that's what. So let's say when I am trying to access it through my UI. So Azure directories is not something really work that, it really doesn't work from the backend point of view, but it again works at the the UI side. What actually happens is, let's say I have a user, the screen you see, right? So you will be specifying certain user ID and followed by the password. And once you do the login, it will actually go back to the Azure directories, right? So this particular UI thing, right, when I click the login ID and all, that is something that will actually go to the Azure ID and bring me back my JWT. So let's say if I actually do this transaction and open my developer tools, I can actually see a field that is all the, it will actually hold all my session data, which one, it does include the authentication part. So there will be a very big string. So that is something which we call the BRAE token. And once this BRAE token is specific to Azure ID, and this actually, if you decode it right, it gives you the authentication part of it. The role and all, right? So that is how they do it. Again,
what all does a JWT token consist of?
So JWT basically, as I said, it will be like a BRAE token. So it actually holds all the required values, which I don't know exactly what it will hold, because that's like a long string. It has to be decoded, and that decoding everything happens from the Azure side, not something which we do, right? And
let's say if you have to do such an activity, right? Let's say you're not relying on Azure AD, and then you have to generate a JWT token.
Okay.
Right. So what all things you should include in JWT?
Okay, I'm not sure. Probably we'll go with the Spring security part. Yeah, so probably we'll use Spring security, and that is something I haven't used in this thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Okay. Have you ever heard about JWT claims?
No.
JWT. Okay. Okay. That's fine. Okay. That's fine. So Okay, so now you're going to have Azure AD give you the token, and then the token you're passing it onto your APIs.
Yes. And
Okay, so
API.
now
Yeah.
you
So
talked about this centralized service which is having a common set of components, right? So
yes.
now this you are deploying as a microservice or a technical level?
No, this will be deployed individually in each, into the nodes of AKS, right? The Kubernetes cluster. So each node will be basically running, one instance of, basically in the container, right? So what actually happens is each service, right? How the DevOps guys have done it is they will, like each service has a Docker image. This particular Docker image is then, first stored in the container.
My question is my question is is like this common service that you're talking about. Is it a microservice or you're including it as a library within your component in your individual microservice? Or
okay, that way. Yes, we are actually including this in the POM file. So all the POM files will actually have this particular component of the, as a dependency. So all the jars will be downloaded for compiling and also.
Got it. So now this is a custom built jar now, right?
Yes.
It's not coming from Maven.
Yes.
Right. So how do you handle such custom built jars actually, like in terms of defining the dependencies? Typically, what happens when you use a POM? You will have some you will have a Maven repository to connect with and to download jars. So now, how do you deal with custom jars?
Okay. So what actually happens is it will directly. So there is something called as the settings.xml, right? So under normal scenario, it will be connected to your Maven's centralized this thing, right? So in our project, we will actually specify a specific URL, because we don't want any just like that any dependency to be included that might break the security later on. So that's why they have their own repository for the Maven. So what actually happens is in the URL, we do specify that link. Right, so that is proprietary to the ROS, right? So they have put all the required dependencies which we might require.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's say now you're using Spring Boot, right? Spring Boot comes with its own set of like when you include your Spring Boot starters, right? It comes with it's open-ended framework, so it comes with its own set of dependencies and libraries, right?
Yes.
So now if I do not want to include a certain jar file coming in, right?
Okay.
How can I do that actually?
First thing is
I don't want to pull in unnecessary libraries and jars into my project, right?
Okay.
Because when you say Spring Boot, yeah, I mean it's good and it's bad also in certain ways.
Yes, true. So all these jars will be again part of the class path, right?
That I don't want to pull unnecessary dependencies.
Yes. So we can do one thing is first of all not include the dependency, or directly we can go to the COM, because let's say I'm creating any Spring Boot project from the scratch. I'll be starting out with the Spring initializer, right? So it does asks you what exactly the dependencies you want. So first thing I can do is not include the dependency which I want. Again, there are certain which are mandatory. Let's say I have a web project and I do need some web-based dependency, right? So that is one way at the initial stage. But again, let's say I don't want it, some.
Let me give you a more specific situation, right?
Okay.
Let's say I want to. So when you talk about Spring Boot, comes with default embedded Tomcat.
Okay.
Now I want to change this to use Jetty server.
Okay.
How can I do that?
Okay. So there is one approach. We can actually put up the Jetty servers dependency in the file, and then there is an option in the ID where we can specify the servers, right? So in that point of time, it will actually give you a lot of list of servers which are available.
That is like at your IDE level, right? Basically installing the server locally and then doing that. So here it's a microservice. Think about from a deployment standpoint.
Okay, deployment standpoint. If that is the thing, then I'll actually start thinking how my web app is working. So because all the applications, right, which all the services are deployed using the web app. So that's serverless feature from Azure. So what I have to do is I'll be specifying the Git where my source code is actually lying. That is one approach. Or I can directly specify the the Docker image, right? And that Docker image can be further down. So like whenever I'm trying to go with that web app, it actually provides all the other various options which you can opt. So since we are in a Dockerized environment, so we specify the Docker image, right? So this particular Docker image will be internally then loaded into the web app, right? So that is something, now I cannot physically figure out where exactly that, virtual machine is, but that is something, existing in some data center of Azure. So that's.
So what does a Docker image consist of essentially? You define your Docker file. What are you doing exactly there?
So, okay. So in order to answer this question, we have to just tell like what exactly Docker is. So Docker is a next-gen virtualization wherein you can virtualize pretty much everything rather than just talking of an host OS, right? So Docker image basically, when I say Docker image, this is nothing but a set of instructions that is given, right, to the. So basically, I'll write a file. So let's say from is a keyword that is used to use like which source image you want, base image. So let's say I'm talking of a JDK point of view. So I'll be specifying, let's say, JDK 1.8. So it will fetch an image. So this image is nothing but basically an instance of some application. Let's say that application can be a small Java application, that can be a big OS also, right? So when I say open JDK 1.8 from, so what it will do is it will get an Ubuntu instance, right, which already has JDK installed. So we have a library of just the way we have Maven repository, right? So we do have Docker Hub. So Docker Hub has a lot of inbuilt images which we can use, right? So from there it will actually get that value, and then we again specify the add-ons. So add-ons can be specific JVM commands. Let's say we want certain JVM required, like this much memory should be there and all the configuration kind of a thing. And then when we go with the docker build command, right? So we specify this particular file. So this is just like a manifest file, right? And once we go for the build command, so what it will actually create is it will get that particular image. It will pretty much build it, and then we have an image. So this particular image, now if I put it in a Dockerized environment, right? So if I do docker.run, so Docker will be basically like a daemon thing that is working behind the scenes on any OS. So what actually happens, the best benefit is, let's say there were those scenarios where one developer developed something in his system and then the OS changed, the platform or the environment changed. There are chances that it didn't run. But under a Dockerized thing, what actually will happen is, this guy will create a Docker image, so that Docker image, let's say, assuming he has given all proper instructions, everything. So it will have a running instance. Let's say if I do a Docker run followed by his Docker file, Docker image, that should actually start running, right? So that's like it has its own virtual space, so that which we call as the containers. So inside the containers, an image will be running, right? So when I say image is running, basically all those instructions will be executed one by one, followed by environment will be set up down the street. So Docker actually gives a very good advantage under the situation, right? So it will actually specify, okay, let's say I have one environment and exactly I want to make the same copy of it without any alteration.
Let's say you have Kubernetes coming into play, right?
Okay.
The next thing is Kubernetes, right? So now how would you actually take a Docker image and then deploy it on a Kubernetes environment?
Okay. Yeah, so that's okay. I'll tell it from how the Azure DevOps does it. Okay, because there are other ways of doing it also. We can use Jenkins, which I learned long back. But again, I'll take up the modern approach. That's the Azure DevOps. So when I say Azure DevOps, that is a complete solution given by Azure itself. So whenever I'm creating a pipeline, so what I'll do is I'll first of all tag it with one container repository. So that's like the private containers for it's pretty much like a Docker Hub that is private to any organization, right? And these whenever I am creating a build, that particular build image will be actually saved there. So it's pretty much like JFrog Artifactory, how it stores all the WAR files, right? The binary files. Okay. So now in the pipeline only I can specify whenever I am creating an AKS, right? So there will be a manifest file that is used to initiate the whole transaction that will be taken down by the Kubernetes thing. So what actually happens there is this particular image, right? So this image I can tag down. So whenever I'm creating, so like because at the end of the day, AK is also a resource that is being provided. So I have a resource group. Under that particular resource group, I will specify, okay, I need an AKS, right, service, which will be again initiated down the street. And then in my DevOps pipeline, I specify, okay, this, I have to get the latest image and that has to be deployed. So these are the basic, command line instructions that you can specify.
Okay, so we have to Okay, so in the interest of time, right? Just if you have to be very specific, right? Like if you're using Kubernetes, right? What all things you need to deploy a Docker image?
Okay.
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 And then what all things are required?
Yeah. So AKS, when I say AKS,
we can use AKS only as an example, and then how we would actually use Kubernetes to deploy.
Okay. Okay. Let's say I don't have AKS. That's also very. It's not a very difficult thing to do that. So what will I be doing is I'll directly create 3 nodes, assuming I have 2 nodes and one will be the master node, right? So I'll be installing. So when I say nodes, basically they are just the plain systems, right? So I'll just install all the kubectl and all. So basically Kubernetes will be there. So whenever I'm installing Kubernetes, by default Docker will be there. That will be running instance inside it. If you see the architecture of Kubernetes. So again, I'll have this. I'll be attaching all the nodes. So there will be the master will be listening, and then node has to make a request in order to connect the cluster. All that done. So I have a running Kubernetes cluster ready with me. So that's an on-premise setup. And then in those case, let's say I'm using Jenkins. So Jenkins, I'll use something called as Jenkins file. So in the Jenkins file, I again specify that uses internally Groovy, I believe, to code the basic instructions, right? So in that there is something called as kubectl deploy followed by get image command, and you can specify the URL for the image. Let's say it's a private one, then again you have to generate a SAS key in order to connect to that. And then once my Jenkins pipeline is run, so what it does is it will get that particular file, deploy it into the Kubernetes cluster, right? So that is one way. That's the old, not exactly old, but on-premise setup kind of a thing. But in AKS, it's a lot more simple. When I say AKS, I just have to specify how many nodes I need. That's it, done. Everything will be managed by Azure itself, and
Azure is giving you AKS as a managed Kubernetes service.
Yeah.
Now my question is still the same, right? Like now you have to do it hands-on. Okay. So you have AKS cluster. Okay, let me make it even more specific for you. Let's say I have already created the AKS cluster for you with 2 nodes. And then I want to create, let's say, 4 pods.
Okay.
And then deploy my services, right?
4
so what
pods,
are the things you could do?
Okay, cool. So when I say pods will be part of one node, right? So these are like, various blocks inside a node, and inside these pods containers will be running, right? So keeping that aside, let's say you want 4 pods, right, in a node. So whenever I'm creating AKS, I don't have my portal right now. I would have shown. It's quite simple actually. We just have to create a resource. First type AKS, then it will ask how many nodes you want, and let's say whenever I'm saying nodes, it will internally also attach it to.
Given you the prerequisite, AKS cluster is up and running. You have 2 nodes.
Okay.
So cluster is there, right? So the nodes are there. So you created a cluster to specifying the number of nodes that you need. All that. You define the capacity for the nodes, etc. All that is taken care of. Okay. So now I want you to take this image, the Docker image that you have built, and then deploy it now.
Yeah. So that's what that is. Yeah. So
cluster is already there, right? So there's nothing.
True.
I mean, I don't want you to go back into creating a cluster part, right? Yeah, we know it's existing.
Yes.
It's given now. Okay. So now what would you do, right? So what all things that you do when you have to deploy? You talked about kubectl. What would you do using kubectl?
Okay, so whenever I'm doing this thing, right, so I won't be talking about AKS as of now, since I'm talking of a Docker image that has to be deployed to a Kubernetes cluster. So what I'll actually do is I'll go with the pipeline thing now. So Azure DevOps, right, whenever we're trying to create a pipeline, there will be set of instructions. So there will be a agent job. So inside that there will be various stages.
What will you give in the pipeline to deploy it?
No, I don't have to. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't really have to specify the deployment instruction right down there. I just have to specify the Docker image and the cluster where I have to deploy it. So automatic deployment happens there. Right. So
so when you create a pipeline, do you come up with some deployment scripts? Even within Azure DevOps also.
Yeah. So that's what. As a developer, we won't be doing all that because there is a specific DevOps team dedicated.
But are you aware of setting up anything individually? Like if you have to do a manual thing, okay, DevOps, okay. Don't get in the DevOps pipeline, okay? I agree. Like if you have to do it manually, what would you do? What is required for deploying a Docker image into Kubernetes?
Yes, I have done it as a part of my POC. I have done it. So what we did is we used a Jenkins. Inside the Jenkins, we will we will be basically giving a Jenkins file. So inside the Jenkins file, we will write instruction. So that does include some kubectl hyphen deploy, and then we will give a deployment file, right? The file specified by .service, right?
Got it. Okay. So just to cover a few remaining points, right? Okay. So now in terms of, we talked about Azure function apps, right?
Yeah.
So where's this application hosted? You talked about function apps, and then now we are also talking about AKS as well, right? Where is this application actually hosted on?
Again, function app is something that is a serverless solution, right? So if I actually do, let's say I just created it under my resource and I have to check it. So it gives me a URL, right? So that URL is something where this, the application will be actually running, right? So this is something that, again, Azure does it from the backend. So since, as the name suggests, it's a serverless kind of a thing, so we won't be, actually handling the server there, right? Internally, again, it's also a server. It will be a system wherein some instructions will be there. It will do certain activities and all. But application, I can definitely tell you how did I use it. So we did use a function app for triggers, right? So there are the various kinds of triggers that can happen. So starting with blob triggers, that is what I technically used. So blob trigger is something.
So what was the difference between when you're actually putting your application code to be deployed on Azure functions app versus a Kubernetes one? So we talked about Kubernetes to a certain degree now. So how about functions actually? What did you do?
Okay, so that's what it is. It is quite specific to the requirement. See, when I say I need a trigger, I mean, let's say there is a code of lines of code that has to be executed once a blob is changing. There is a change that is happening to the blob. Right. Again, this is something one can actually code also, right? But it doesn't make much of a sense because we are already paying a lot of money for the other services which are using from Azure. So Azure directly gives it like, okay, take it, you can use it. So what actually happens is, if there a new zip file, this was the requirement back then. So if a new file actually comes into that particular blob, my extraction service should start out. So that was the requirement. So what I did is I just have to configure my function app in such a way that once the trigger happens, I mean any change is happening to that particular container. So I have to specify all the path and everything to that particular container, right? And then I will specify all the code. So what actually happens is, whenever that code just any change is happening to that particular block, let's say a zip file just came in, so it will actually check the extension, everything, and verify that okay, the signature is correct, and then it will call up the the extraction service, right? So that particular extraction again converts it.
Extraction service, is it hosted on Azure functions or Azure?
No. When I say blob function, right? So the function app. So it's not like it's not just a trigger. You can actually specify the lines of code which you want to run. So the whole the whole transaction that is being happened, that's actually called.
Right. So when you get a file on your blob, so blob storage can trigger an event for you, right? And that event can basically you can plug it into your Azure functions, right? So now let's say
no.
Okay. Now, my question is, now within the function app, are you doing any sort of business logic there, or extracting this file?
Yes.
What are you doing there actually?
Yeah, so what actually happens is, whenever trigger happens, right, it will convert that particular, whatever data is coming into it, it will convert it into a stream, right? So that particular stream, it will be like an input stream, right? So we can actually use that particular input stream, and then what I did was, again, there was a zip kind of a thing. So we use like zip input stream, and then we'll take it the file, and then till the there are like certain instructions, but again all these are part of that particular function app. So this is just like a code. It's even the function app, if you actually see, it's actually a code. The only thing is, you do have certain then again it's not only blob, then you again have the HTTP triggers, right? And then you also have certain Redis cache.
So my question now, let's say I got this file, right? Now I want to take this file and then write to some other destination.
Yeah. So what happens is,
also probably call another service which will trigger an email.
Okay? Yes.
So now we have to write this code and then deploy on other functions app. What will you do?
Okay. First thing, when I say IntelliJ, right? So I'll use IntelliJ, right? So in order to get, so there is a plugin that is Azure Functions, right? Basically Azure. So in that you can use the function app as one of the add-ons, right? So I have to configure. So what actually will do, I'll give all the credentials, everything in it. So it will tag me in.
Okay.
And then I'll get a base script, base lines. So what actually that line will be there is, okay, let's say this is the location of the container. I mean, wherever your blob you want, right? So that particular location will be specified. And then there will be streams followed by a array of characters, or it can be byte also, based on your requirement. So we use the byte array, right? So it will, what actually happens is, as and when any change is happening there, so it converts into byte. So the first thing which we did was byte to input stream conversion. So we have function for that. Then again from input stream we'll convert it into the zip input first we will take, and then we will be so we do have certain functions in it. Zip dot has next and all that. So until the entries are there, we will be putting into some other container, right? And then at the end we will close it down. So this is what I did.
Got it. Okay. So from Azure IAM standpoint, do you understand what service principles are?
Which one?
Service principle. Do you know what the service principle is?
No, not really. Not really.
Okay. Okay. Do you know what, like application objects or application identity or managed identities in Azure? Have you ever come across that?
No, not really.
Okay. Okay. So now the system has to talk to another system on Azure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now it has to authenticate, right? So typically, what kind of approach have you followed there to ensure that the systems trust each other?
Certificates. Okay. I haven't worked personally, but I did see it like around the corner. So what they did actually was, we did have some. I mean, there were some certificates, right? So they were passing it along. I think in some of the logic apps I've seen it. So they they do is they will authenticate it using the logic apps. Yeah. So,
okay. So tell me one thing. Have you had any feature where you had to upload something to a blob storage?
Yes, I did have. That was my first functionality which I worked on.
Your application.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now from your service, you're uploading a file to storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how do you authenticate, right?
Yes.
So
Okay.
your
Got
service
it.
has to authenticate to storage
Okay.
before it can.
Yeah.
Right.
So whenever I'm creating any container, right? So the container can have various accessibilities. So starting with public, private, right? So it can be a public container. If it is a public container, only and only thing you need to connect is the connection string, right? So if I specify the connection string, directly I can access that block. If it is a private, then we do have something called as a SAS key. So SAS key is basically a combination of the connection string and a uniquely identified property, right? So there is a function that is called the SAS key generator. So we'll actually create the blob client, and then under the blob client we'll again specify the blob storage, give the path, everything done, and then I'll also specify let's say there is a function that is called create if not exists. Inside that I'll specify the container that is the blob, and followed by the access specifying. If it is private, so if it is a private, then there will be a third parameter that will be the SAS key. So this particular SAS key is something.
Okay. So just my last question now. So have you used any messaging applications on Azure?
Yes, Azure we have used. Yes, on Azure I have used. That is something like event hubs. So let me just examine. So what actually these things will do is, let's say I have an email service, right? So I did certain transactions and I want the other service to know that okay, this thing has happened and I am supposed to do something else. So we have something called as the services, listening services, right? So email will actually have a listening component inside it. So what actually will happen is this particular let's say that the transaction that happened, after that it will send one message to the event hub. So event hub, let's say we call it the email service. So the event hub of the email, it will send one message, right? Okay, now you have to so we do have a body for that. So based on the body it takes, so that is called the description part. So based on the description, the receiver will get it and further process it. So that's that. And also
Okay, fair enough. All right. So Sachin, thank you so much. I know I've taken some extra time. I wanted to do like 1 hour, but 15 minutes extra. Sorry about that. Quickly, I just want to cover a couple of quick things like what's the reason for the change from your company right now?
Actually, I'm looking forward for better prospects because it's already been 2 years for me, and I'm actually looking forward to upscale my knowledge and domain base also. Because what actually happens in most of the service companies is you'll be part of a project that might go for a long run. And whenever we say any project that is going for a long run, usually we get that routine kind of a feeling, right? So routine is something I believe, at least as a junior developer or something, this is the time where I'll be gaining a maximum. I'll be at my maximum efficiency in terms of work. So I want to try out like various things. So
fair enough. Fair enough. Are you in notice period right now, or have you got any offers?
Yes, right now I'm in notice period.
Okay. Holding any offers, or?
Yeah, I'm actually holding an offer.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what's your last working day?
Last will be 30th March.
30th March. Okay. All right. Okay. Great talking to you, Sai. If you have any questions, let me know. That's all I had for today. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, actually, it was lovely talking to you. I mean, I really enjoyed the whole talk, to be honest.
You have raised a pull request and you've raised it to your master branch. Perfect.
Yes. And then I have changes. What changed, and we can do review. Yes.
Okay. You can do the review. I can give you comments. Perfect. So now let's move